Hello everyone and welcome to the Lisa Burke Show. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and this week something very close to my heart. We're going into nature. We're going to talk about biodiversity, and I know of course in Luxembourg and right across Europe this is hot on the agenda. We've got some city nature challenges coming up as well, and we will go into depth into many more facets of biodiversity, why it's important and how to get involved as a citizen scientist. In the studio with me, I have Youri Martin, John Park, Paul Braun and Patrick Lorget, and joining online from Austria I have Gerrit Hager. To give you a little bit more information about my guest, Gerrit Hager is a research scholar at the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis in Austria. She's the principal investigator and coordinator of Urban Relief up until 2026, which is a Horizon Europe project which is trying to foster citizen-powered data ecosystems for inclusive and green urban transitions. She also leads the Citizen Observatory Work Package of the Horizon 2020 Framework Project on biodiversity in farmland landscapes, and is the co-chair of the European Citizen Science Association's Agri-Food Working Group. Hello to you, Gerrit, and welcome.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the show together with my colleagues from Luxembourg.
Yeah. Yes, and I will introduce those now. We are going to come to you a little bit later in the show. Paul Braun is the digital curator at the National Museum of Natural History in Luxembourg. Patrick Lorget is a birder and field ornithologist. And John Park is a citizen scientist and works under the trade name of Bee Together. And that is a BEE together, just if you haven't worked that out already. Youri Martin, a little bit more about you, because I'm going to come to you as well as Gerrit at the top of the show here. You're a senior engineer in biodiversity in the Biodiversity Monitoring and Assessment Group within the Environmental Sensing and Modelling Unit at the Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology, otherwise known as LIST, yes, because otherwise there's so many words to get through. And you are also the principal investigator of the BIODIV project, documenting at the national scale the conservation status of European protected species under the EU Habitats Directive. You're also the facilitator of the Luxembourg Farmer Cluster for the Horizon 2020 Framework Project on biodiversity in farmland landscapes. And you work alongside LIST to engage citizen science and train volunteers. So there's lots of words I've used there, Youri and Gerrit. Gerrit, I'll start with you, in fact, because you're based in Austria. I would like you to outline to us mere citizens who might become citizen scientists, what is Europe doing? What are all of these Horizon framework projects and why are they important?
Yes, so these Horizon framework projects are European funded research and innovation projects. That's what we are talking about in this context. So European funded research projects that usually have different partners from across the European Union come together, create a joint research project, and then also implement that together across the European Union. So this current framework project that we're talking about has more than 20 partners across Europe, and we work in 11 European countries, in 9 European countries with 11 farmer clusters in these countries. So it's always a huge collaborative effort across the European Union that is funded by the EU, and it really tries to bring different perspectives, different cultures, different approaches within Europe together, and to do something and to make change for the better as a collaborative effort.
And this is so important,
especially in these days. Really important to underline.
Well, I was going to say exactly that because, of course, we are talking about the EU right now. We have country boundaries, but of course biodiversity, sustainability across the world, the climate change issues that we are facing, farmers will face continuously, well, we will all face in different ways. There are no borders there, and that is why it is important to work collaboratively, and it has always been important to work collaboratively in science. So many other things I might add as well, but particularly science has always had that nature across countries and that collaborative work. Now, you work especially with farmers and also citizens, and it's important to bring citizens in here right from the top, because without the collection of massive amounts of data, the science can't be properly done.
Yes, I would say the data aspect and the quantity aspect of data is always an important one. Also, especially if you're looking at biodiversity across scales. But Youri is the better person to talk about that. But I think it's not just about the data. Yeah, it is bringing people in, raising awareness about the different issues, and also creating a space where people can make a difference, not only with the observations they take, but also with the gained knowledge that they leave a citizen science experience with, to be able to help promote biodiversity, to speak about biodiversity and the importance of it, and what we can all do to support it. So it's, yes, the data is absolutely important, but it is also likewise important to make people a part of the research process, and to make people get a sense of ownership and awareness about the topics that they encounter through citizen science.
And you have given me the perfect segue to Youri, who your main activity is biodiversity monitoring. So tell us about the work that you do, Youri.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. So exactly, at least in my team, biodiversity team, we are mainly working on monitoring biodiversity, which means that we are setting standard protocol to collect data on different species. It can be butterfly, it can be bumblebees, it can be reptiles, even amphibians, a lot of different species. And we set a standard protocol to collect the data every year with the same method. It's very important to cover, in our case, the whole country every year. And our goal is to understand the dynamic of those populations, if the populations increase, decrease, or what's going to happen in the future, and so on. And we want to understand the dynamic of those species.
With the same method, I know that we have obviously the same method, and it makes perfect sense to have the same method year on year so that the data can be comparable. Is that the same method used in all of the other European countries?
It depends, but for instance, we are working on the butterfly. We are a member of Butterfly Conservation Europe, and they use the same method. They try to push each member state to use exactly the same method, and that's what we are using. So I will talk about it now. It's a transect walk. So you have to walk around 1 kilometer of a transect, and you have to look for each butterflies you can see in a virtual box of 2 meters.
When you say transect, you mean like the same route?
Exactly. It's a path, and always the same path that you have to walk every 2 weeks. Every year, years after years. And we have started this program 12 years ago in Luxembourg. And with all the data that we collect in the same way, with a lot of different people, it can be professional, but we also are including volunteers like John, for instance. We collect all the data, and because the data are collected in the standard way, the same way, we can make strong analysis and inferences about how this population are fluctuating in years. And that's why it's really important to try to bring volunteers into this program. If this program are well taught, standardized, then we can train and engage volunteers into doing it and collecting very valuable data. And as we said already, it's very difficult to be everywhere in the country or at a European scale on the same time. So that's why volunteers are really important to get engaged in those programs.
Can you give us? You said you've been doing this work, or at least the work has been done for 12 years. I don't know if you've been there for 12 years.
Actually, I was.
You have, okay.
I started my PhD at least, and then I moved during 5 years, and I came back. And actually, I was at the beginning of the installation of this program as a PhD student at that time, and now I am the PI, principal investigator of this project, and it's very interesting actually now to be able to see the data and see the graph. And unfortunately, for most of the species, it's not in the right direction.
Okay, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
What is the pattern? So can you give us a small? I know 12 years is not a huge amount of time in the life scale of certain species. decline. I don't want to use that word, but I guess that's what you're going to tell me.
Yeah, it's actually a strong decline, a very strong decline for all the insects, especially those recent 10 years. So we started actually the monitoring when it was already starting to fall down everywhere in Europe. Actually this week, tomorrow, I will go to a conference about butterfly monitoring, which is the European EBMS program. So all the member states that are participating in the same protocol of collecting butterfly data, as I just explained how. And they calculate a grassland butterfly index, which means the most important species in grassland habitat in Europe. And with all the data from all the member states, we can have a strong index of decline, unfortunately, for grassland butterflies. And the European Commission will now use these indicators, and it will be written in the law that we should try to reverse these trends. And that's why we have to continue those programs, collecting the data in the same way and trying even to increase the collection of those data. And we show to the Commission that these monitoring are really valuable and important to...
Can you give me any rough average figure of the decline year on year?
It's depending on each species. Some species I have seen they have disappeared since the beginning of the monitoring. We have like maybe 3 species that have disappeared. But we can say roughly that about 60% of the mass abundance of the butterflies have declined.
Wow, that is an extraordinary, and that's in 12 years.
Yes, well, the last 10 years.
That's a shocking figure, quite frankly. So the obvious question is why, and what can we do about it?
Well, that's a very good question, and that's actually the topic of the conference I will be tomorrow. It's try to understand the dynamic why the insects are declining so strongly these last years. We know that there is several effects playing here. There is the climate change, of course, that is changing what we can say the climate envelope where the species has to live. But you also have a strong impact into the land, the habitat access to the butterflies. There is a lot of changes in the landscape. You can see it around you. It's building everywhere. You put this with climate change. And we also know that in the, unfortunately, agricultural landscape, there is a strong decline of butterflies because of the pesticides, for instance. So you combine all those effects from climate change, land use, pesticides, and pollution, and then all those 3 factors play together and you have a decline of species. It's strong for insect for now, and it is really alarming, and my colleague will probably talk about birds later. But of course, insects are the base of the food chain, so it's not a good sign that insects are declining so strongly.
Yeah, and I just want to bring it back then quickly to Gerard to comment upon that, your observations as well, and also because you work so closely with the farmers. You mentioned pesticides. We know that pesticides have to be used, or well, have to be is maybe strong, but are used in order to increase the amount of efficiency for crop production, perhaps. But Gerard, do you have any thoughts on how farmers who tend to the land every day will be incredibly aware of what's happening on their land? How can they help this situation?
So I haven't personally worked with the farmers directly in these farmer clusters. I've been working mostly with those people working with farmers. But what we see in the framework project, so I can talk a little bit about that, is that depending also on the type of agricultural system and on the country and on the agriculture, so the culture of agriculture. The approaches differ, and yes, there's the agricultural intensification, but then there's also raising awareness within the farming communities that farmers can make a big difference, and that there are methods and measures out there, and even funding instruments that can support farmers in implementing more biodiversity sensitive farming. But it is definitely a big cultural shift required towards more biodiversity aware farming, especially if we talk en masse and on scale. There's always these pockets of pioneering farmers who have been, implementing these measures for decades almost, and there's more and more interest. but without the proper incentivization from also the national states and from the European Union. We're talking about the CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy. All these types of measures need to work hand in hand in order to enable the farmers to make a change on the ground. Yeah, and the farmer cluster concept that we've introduced in this framework project is also one step towards being more innovative in how farmers can also not only tackle these issues alone, but collectively as farmer groups on a landscape scale, because especially in terms of promoting biodiversity, a landscape scale perspective is very important, not just looking at the individual farms, but how the farms are interconnected, especially if it's about habitats, restoration and supporting biodiversity.
So, John, I want to turn to you actually next, because bringing it all down to the citizen, we've had a little bit of a conversation on the European scale, what's happening, and you got involved because you just signed up to a local course on how to identify butterflies.
Yeah, I think it probably starts a bit earlier than that. In December 2010, I started working as a volunteer for some of the nature events with Nature and Umwelt of Hausfond der Natur in Kokershire. And that, I think, is probably the real initiation. And then I found out about the course being offered by LIST and CIAS about butterfly identification. And they made it very clear, the person from LIST, Xavier, that they were looking for volunteers. And I think quite often we feel as citizens that we can't do very much about contributing to scientific research. And I think, clearly we can. And Xavier made that point very clear that, we can get involved with these transects that Youri was talking about, as you said, is a walk. And I'm doing one for the last 5 years. This will be my 6th year.
But it is quite a commitment, actually, if you do it.
It is.
Maybe you could just describe, because it's a certain,
Sure.
I mean, I know that the month is just opening now. It runs for a certain amount of months. So describe to us what the commitment is.
So I'm doing the transect called Béton-sur-Metz, which is one of the villages in Luxembourg. And as Youri said, it's about 1 kilometer. It takes me about an hour and a half to walk it. And part of the walk is to count butterflies, and part of it is to count bumblebees. And this is to be done twice a month from April, the beginning of April, to the end of September. And then, of course, you need to make sure that you input all the data. Of course, you need to follow the protocol that Youri was talking about, which has specific requirements in regards to weather, like it needs to be a minimum of 15 degrees centigrade, I think, if there's 75% cloud cover, or 13 degrees centigrade if there's no cloud cover, something like that. But anyways, it's all spelled out in a protocol that you need to follow and respect in order to be consistent with the other countries who are also participating in this monitoring program.
And I imagine it makes you feel good that you can give back in this way.
As I said, I think for me, giving back in the sense that you can actually contribute. And then there's 2 recent examples where Youri has the Butterfly Atlas of Luxembourg, which I counted the other day that there are 242 volunteers, or also employees of LIST, who have contributed to collecting data about butterflies. So, my name is among the 242, but it's not so much my name that's important to be there, but that what I'm doing is actually contributing and helping them to be able to look at trend analysis in regards to population trends and abundance trends.
Well, I think you have the wonderful quote from the Lorax book. Would you like to give us one of your favorite quotes?
Yes. So this is, some of you have seen the film, but I think the book is even more important than the film. It says, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to change. It's not. And I think, as they say, all of us can contribute to helping collect data. And I think, iNaturalist, which we're going to talk about at some point, is a very good example where citizens can quite easily get involved in contributing data to scientific research.
Well, thank you very, very much indeed. Actually, just finally, I would like you to tell us a little bit more about the walks that you do, because there is a pan trapping as well of insects. So just talk to us about what that is and how that operates.
So I'm sort of on the collecting insects. So there's basically, I'm doing this in two places, in Ham and Béton-sur-Metz. And there's 3 bowls that look like, sort of to my eyes, at least sort of more or less fluorescent colors. And in it is soapy water. And the insects are attracted to these bowls and they end up drowning in it. Obviously, it sounds very cruel, but we need to collect the data on what insects are among the pollinator species in Luxembourg. And then 24 hours later, I have to go and collect them. Of course, there's a protocol to be followed as well. And you need to obviously avoid rain during that period. So, it can be quite difficult to find the right time to do this. It's only 4 times a year, but it's still quite difficult to find
a non-rainy time.
A non-rainy day, but also when you're available, right? Because we all have private lives and we all go on vacation. So I collect the insects by filtering them through a tea bag, effectively. And then I give this to one of the scientists, Lisette at LIST, and she and her colleagues, and also some of the specimens go to other countries to identify the insect to species level. And again, this is also contributed to a paper in Luxembourg on genetic drift and genetic variation in 2 different species of insect. So here again, you can see that there's a real contribution to scientific research from the pan traps as well.
What I really love, actually, you've already said that, very humbly, that your name is on, I know, scientific papers and in the book as a citizen scientist. And you've also just name-checked the scientist at LIST who's doing this work. The wonderful pride you have in the group and the team that you work with, and how important each individual is. And I really like the fact that you've named Lisette there as well. And thank you to her for her work. Now, Paul Brown, you're the digital curator at the National Museum of Natural History here in Luxembourg, dedicated to the digitalization of the National Heritage Collection since 2018. Your own background is in geological science with a focus on paleontology. And you also manage the national database on biodiversity data, specifically species occurrences. You do other things, but effectively you're the Global Biodiversity Information Facility Node Manager for Luxembourg and the iNaturalist.lu site manager. Now, for anybody who hasn't yet downloaded, that's a lot, by the way, but all of you have a lot. I mean, if I read any of your CVs, there's a lot. I have the iNaturalist app. I confess on air, I haven't used it yet. However, you are here today to scold me, to motivate me, and to motivate all listeners as well to tell us how to use it.
Definitely. So, you described pretty nicely what we do actually at the museum. So we heard now that where data is collected using a protocol used for monitoring. So much of this data will end up with us at the museum. So we manage actually this national database where we publish the data for decision makers, for other researchers to reuse it. But we also have a big community of, let's say, hobby researchers, or we have this network of scientific collaborators, or we have just people around that are interested in nature. And so many of those, they historically collected data. Some might have collected specimens, they might end up with us. Some data might end up with us also. And so for some time we have offered a website for people to just encode their own data. But we saw basically with smartphones coming up and everyone having a smartphone that we basically need a solution for people to record occurrences that they see using a smartphone. And so we decided to more promote or use this iNaturalist app, which is not something we invented, but it's like a global network, a global tool where people all around the world use it to record and share also. So that's one very big thing that we are interested in, because we want to be able to consult and reuse the data. So that's always something that we are looking for. And so this iNaturalist platform adheres to this.
I want to just pause to think about the collection of data, because it sounds like a great thing, and we certainly live in the era of data collection. I mean, we've all got, let's just give the example, we all take so many photos nowadays because we have these phones, most of us. But in order to classify data, that's not always so easy. And I, when you were describing, you know, the hobbyist collectors, I can think about many museums back in the UK, for example, where we had the Victorian collectors. There's many museums in the UK I can think about with drawers full of things that are labelled, etc. But to label things correctly, that's not so easy. Is the iPhone getting it right, or whichever phone you happen to have? Is the iNaturalist app getting it correct? Is it good enough to be able to classify each thing you take a photo of?
It is able to classify a lot of things, but of course not everything. So maybe I can describe how the app works. So it's basically based on you documenting something via an image. So you basically take an image, you know it's where did you see it and when did you see it. So with GPS and smartphone, that's of course not a big issue. And then basically you, as someone who has no idea how to classify things, you can ask the app, please tell me what did I see. So you just click a button and then there's an image recognition. So they trained an algorithm based on millions of images they have gathered over the years. And so the app suggests you a species name.
How accurate is the image recognition?
Astonishingly accurate. So there are limitations, of course. We have image organisms that are microscopic. So you can't take a picture of them. Or it also depends on the quality of the image, of course. If it's a bird that's half a kilometer away, the image with the cell phone might not be adequate. Or there are, of course, species where even a specialist is not able to, just on an image, to correctly identify it. They might need to collect it, like John mentioned. They collect specimens to then DNA analyze them to actually figure out what is going on. So there's obvious limitations, but for very broad number of species, it works very, very nicely.
Well, this is the perfect time to get involved, because we have the City Nature Challenge upon us. It's happening here in Luxembourg, but it's really a global BioBlitz event.
Mm-hmm. So a BioBlitz is basically, let's say, a time period and then a place where we decide within this time period to document as much species as possible. And so the City Nature Challenge is something that's now in its 10th edition globally. And so in Luxembourg, we participate for the 7th time now. And so it's this last weekend, so from the 25th to the 28th of April. So basically we call upon everyone in Luxembourg to download iNaturalist and then basically start documenting what they see. And so the same thing is then done in more than 500 other regions around the world. And so last year there were like 2.5 million observations gathered around the world. Well, for Luxembourg, we are like 9,000, but of course we have to consider that there are regions which have millions and millions of people that live there.
Well, when you think about 9,000, even just as a figure, you know, that's a sizable amount compared to, I don't know how many people are at the University of Luxembourg doing biodiversity work, but it wouldn't be that figure. So it's really a great boost to the data.
Yeah, definitely. We are really able to let's say also kickstart the season to maybe motivate people now trying out iNaturalist, and because iNaturalist you can use it whenever. So it's not bound to what we heard before. It's not bound to a specific protocol. You don't have to walk this transect, but you can use it everywhere you want. So you can, even on vacation, if you see something interesting that you might know from home or that you have never seen before, use the app, see what the algorithm gives you, and then please also share it, because you can use the app without sharing it. But for us, of course, for the researchers, it's very interesting to also for people to share, and because then you will also get the feedback from other users, which are specialists around the world, which will take a look at your image and maybe say, definitely you're right or you're wrong. This species might not occur wherever you saw it, or based on this image we can't clearly identify it.
So you can pick up a wonderful hobby to take you out into nature. You can do good for science, and you can literally key yourself into a completely new community, which is a global community of conversation.
Just maybe to add something to that is that iNaturalist is tied to the Wikipedia, so you can obtain more information about the species on a Wikipedia page, which is obviously a great learning and education tool, not only for yourself, but you could engage with your family as well as part of this process and make it a family event as well.
Have you done so?
Well, there's only myself and my wife, but yes. But yes, I'm using Wikipedia as part of the iNaturalist tool, as a means of trying to educate myself, particularly, for example, the host plant of the caterpillar of a butterfly and what plant the caterpillar needs in order for that butterfly to be present in Luxembourg. So, for example, that the stinging nettle is such an important plant for at least 6 species of butterfly in Luxembourg. And this is something that you can learn through this process of using Wikipedia to complement what you see as being identified as a species through the iNaturalist app.
I think it's very much a tool to get into exploring nature and then understanding more. So you can also have a look of what other people saw around you, or if you see you get notification and you see there's no other observations around you, either it's something very special or it's something you misidentified. So you can really go through it and learn on it. And there's really a huge community behind it, which is very friendly and very open of new people, and you get feedback if there's something special.
How has your connection with nature changed over the years since you've been doing this work?
Well, I've been very fortunate to have been able to purchase a small piece of land in Zirin, which is now being converted into an orchard. And I sort of make a point every year of taking photographs of all the plants and flowers and all the insects particularly. I mean, that's sort of my main focus, if you like, or my main interest. And every year I sort of challenge myself to see if I can find something new that wasn't there before or that I haven't noticed before. And I think it's very humbling, also by looking at Wikipedia about how little I know about the natural world. And by using iNaturalist, I can see that there are new species that weren't in the orchard before or that I hadn't noted before.
But just in a philosophical mindset way, how has it changed how you see the world around you?
I think I'm much more observant, obviously, through this process. And I feel a better connection to nature. I have a farmer neighbor, and his daughter is apparently very allergic to honeybee stings. And he actually approached me twice to say that he had honeybees in his farm. In one case, it was solitary bees. In the other case, it was a hoverfly. So you can see that there's quite a disconnect, not only with people who live in the cities, but also perhaps some of our farmers who have a disconnect with nature and what's actually happening around them.
How many different types of bees do we have in Luxembourg?
Solitary bees, I think we're at about 360.
Well, you might even, sorry for the general ignorance, but I don't think everybody knows the difference between a solitary bee and a different type of bee. Give us a rundown on bees.
So we have the honeybee. There's only one species. It lives in a colony. Not all of them live in beehives. Some of them live in tree cavities or in our roofs in our houses. Then we have about 25 species of bumblebee. I'll leave that to Youri, who also live in colonies, meaning with a queen, worker bees, and males at a certain point of time in the season. And then the rest, they live on their own, meaning that they create their nest on their own. They lay their eggs, and then they block. They lay an egg. Let me start again. They deposit pollen. They lay an egg on it. Then they close the cell effectively. And it can be either in an insect hotel, which most of us are familiar with, but most of them actually, they nest in the ground. About 70% of them nest in the ground. So having bare earth available to them is very important. And they live in different substrate. So it can be very sandy. It can be fine granular sand, or it can be more dense soil. In some cases, it needs to be compacted soil. But I am far from the expert.
Well, you might be
one.
far from the expert, but actually you've told us a lot more, but certainly me, more than I ever knew about bees in general.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that actually it's really important for the people that listen to us to understand that when you see one bee, there is more than 300 other species. And we need the diversity of all those different way of living, bees, if I can say, for the diversity. And that's why diversity is important. It's because with the climate change, the land use change, we need a diversity of forms, of species that live differently, have different ecology. And it's because we have an assemblage of a lot of species that we hope together they will face the environmental changes we have. So it's important to know that by doing what John did, so learning with iNaturalist, little by little, you start to see all the differences, all the different species you have around you, and then you can understand why each of those species has a very important role to play in the ecosystem around us. And that's why engaging citizens in science is not only useful for getting data to us scientists, but also to get people at the attention of people, like you say, John, to what's living around us and why it is important to care about that. And that's why, I want to just...
And the bees and the birds, they are indicators for a wealthy environment.
Well, I'm about to come to you, Patrick.
So that means that's our habitat, which is disappearing too.
And just to give a little bit more of a larger introduction to you, Patrick Lorget, you're a field ornithologist at Nature and Umwelt, which is a BirdLife Luxembourg association. You've developed the Central Ornithological Luxembourg Association here since 1998, and you've been standardising bird monitoring in Luxembourg, hugely contributed to protective measures and the Natura 2000 bird protection areas with the data that you and the team collected. You head the Field Ornithology Working Group, in which 120 volunteer bird watchers take part in the annual monitoring programmes. So again, we come back to the monitoring, the need for the monitoring. You've also been the co-author of a book, which you can show to the camera. You have it with you, I believe.
I brought one. Yes,
you can show that. Birds of Luxembourg book, yes. And you will lead the work on the new atlas of the breeding birds in Luxembourg. And you've travelled to many, many countries. You love this subject. It has been a huge pillar of your life. So why, coming from the pollinators, from things like bees and butterflies to the birds, what picture do birds show us over the last decade?
So they show quite a clear image that those who are actually protected and managed by nature protection, like the Birds Directive, they go well. But all the commoner species, so which are living in our cultural environment, they are decreasing, and they are like skylark, which is dramatic. So our populations of skylark, they dropped by 60% in 20 years. We lost several breeding species like a windchat, corncrake, which don't breed in Luxembourg anymore and are absolutely rare breeders all over Europe. So it's not only a Luxembourg problem, it's a European problem. It's the European agricultural policy which has to be re-evaluated to more nature protection. There's a new nature restoration law which has been designated in Europe last year and has to be implemented in Luxembourg. And those are really the things that can help our butterflies, our birds, our bees to have strength populations again. But for the moment, it's we look quite in darker times.
So you said that some birds are protected and they're doing okay. Some birds are not, and they're massively decreasing. Again, we hear this 60% figure over 20 years in the case of some birds. So how is it that some birds are protected and some are not? I mean, how is that managed when these are things that fly in the sky? How do you manage this?
So to be clear, all the birds are protected. So there's the Luxembourgish nature protection law. There are the European birds protection law. So all the birds are protected. Some birds may be huntable in some countries, even in Luxembourg, if the populations are well, so no problem. But all the birds are protected. But those who at the European scale are more endangered, they could benefit from live programs to restore their habitat, to gain more protection. So it's a financial question. But all the birds are protected. All the nests of the birds, all the eggs that they lay down are protected. So that's quite a strict protection. But again, that's on the paper. And we need to have actions in the field, in the ground, in the forest to restore those habitats, to give new life to the insects, which is food for birds. So it's all implementing one thing into another.
So everything is connected, which is what Youri said at the top. So again, going back to the habitats, anybody living in Luxembourg knows the way in which building is going on in Luxembourg at the moment, because we have a housing shortage, which is a different topic entirely, but it's connected to the land. So what do you think should be done here in Luxembourg? As an example, and Luxembourg is a test bed for so many other countries in Europe. What needs to be done to increase the habitat necessary for the birds and beyond that, of course, for the birds' food to thrive?
Well, that's it's clearly a political agenda. So if I take woodlark, for example, which is a very rare species in Luxembourg, in the open mine industry in southern Luxembourg, and there was the political will to protect that species, to set up a protection program in the Minière by ANF, who is doing a lot of work there, and the population now is sustainable. So if there is a political will to do something, then we can achieve something. If we have the Valley of the Alzette, Nuelzestal, we can make a restoration of those wetlands, or we can build streets and contournements through it. So that will not help us. And it's really a political will, which is not strong enough for the moment for nature protection to implement those measures. And yes, it could not be a financial problem, because I think the finances are not too bad in Luxembourg. So it's the political will to do something for biodiversity.
Well, I don't think it's just the political will. When it comes to urban landscaping and the need for more housing, do you believe, and Youri as well, do you believe it's possible to build more housing in a way to also keep biodiversity around that?
Yes, I think that's possible. So we have a program, a live program, which is called Urban Birds. If you're here in Kirchberg, you see the new water tower with a lot of nest boxes for swift and peregrine falcon. If you take more measures to a cohabitation of birds and insects and human beings, so that's possible. If you just take into account that we have a lot of landscapes, which are a lot of farmers work on it. If you talk to the farmer, they are willing to do something, but if you talk to their national authorities, it's much more difficult. So.
Yeah, I would like to add, it's a landscape planning actually, and we were talking about protected habitat and species. It's also rules. So at some places you can build because, if I can say, there is less interesting or less rare or protected species, and maybe there, if we really need to build more building, it's the best place. What is really important is first, to have a true compensation measure. When we build a new area, we need to provide elsewhere a place for nature, at least. And it's also really important for the builders to respect the rules and the protected species. It means that at some place, in some area, there are rare habitats, rare species living there, and we don't want any building to be built there.
Well, it's more than that, because all of you have mentioned the decline in species. So it's also about trying to reintroduce and increase the declining species. So it's not just about the protection of rare species. How would you go about speaking to landscape planners, urban planners, architects, even the people buying the land, to give them the power of the voice in order to say, hey, I would like a home here, but I want the nature to be solid also?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. This is actually something that we should do and plan more. But I think there are more nice initiatives. I know, for instance, that now there are buildings that accommodate bird nests, also buildings that are built to accommodate bats. If they close the light, it makes sense, for instance, during the night. So I know that awareness is increasing around builders and stakeholders to try to accommodate biodiversity in new buildings. And I think a lot of things can be done also in your garden or next to the building to have native flowers living around and having like birds and bumblebees and wild bees and butterflies living in two cities. It's possible, and that's why you have City Nature Challenge, for instance.
Well, you've mentioned something that is almost an easy thing to fix when you're talking about bats there. A lot of people have homes or apartment blocks where automatic lights come on if there's movement, of course, and a bat is a moving species. So I guess you think they should be banned.
Yeah, this is a nice example. You know, there are a promoter is building. He will say in the cahier de charge, yes, I will. It will be a green construction because I will have nests for birds and for bats. And then they put spotlight everywhere around the building and are open the whole night long. So which means actually the nest of the bat or even the bird will never be occupied. So we need to make sense into the way we build and we plan things for human and living organism. And I think. Yeah, we should, and there is a nice initiative, but we should, discuss more together between scientists and builder and stakeholders and even politicians. That's what we try to do. I guess all of us here around the table try to communicate the needs of biodiversity around us, and again, involving citizens. It's a way of increasing the awareness on our society about the importance of biodiversity.
So one way is citizen science, of course. I think, Patrick, you were going to say.
Yeah, you can just check the Petrus Valley in Luxembourg City. Yeah. You can have that small stream flowing in its concrete system, or you can, like now, make a restoration of the habitat, and then everybody in Luxembourg City can go there and see with their own eyes how the biodiversity is changing, how many new birds, how many butterflies and bees are coming to those.
Well, expand on this, because that's happened in the number of years since I've lived here. The Petrus Valley, a very beautiful part of, well, you can see it in Luxembourg City. And yes, it used to be a concrete bottom to the rivulet, and that's been removed. So what is the story behind this?
Well, that's a clear political will to make a nature restoration.
But why? What happened to make that happen?
That was, I think a lot of people had that idea since a long time, and there was finally the will to do it and to increase the water recuperation. So we have a concrete canal, water is flowing fast. There's a lot of inundation. If you have a natural river, you have better restoration of water that keeps back when there are large amounts of water coming. So you have both things. So you can have a better flood system, anti-flood system, and you can have more diversity. And if you go there, you see a lot of birds like kingfisher now, the grey heron every day there, moorhen breeding just 5 meters from the path, and nature is reoccupying those new habitats.
When it comes to what we can do as normal people not involved in lab work or building enormous constructions, we have the citizen science element, but also if we have a little patio, if we have a little balcony, if we have a garden, what can we do to help the pollinators and the birds come back?
We just put them a little cover there with water. So you will be impressioned how many birds and how many bees and butterflies and insects are coming there to drink water. It's so dry now in March, April, there's nowhere water on the outside. So if you, on your balcony in your garden, put a little place with water, all the animals will enjoy it and come to drink. You can put feeders in the wintertime, you can put breeding boxes for birds, but just that small cup of water, you will see how many animals will come to drink there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you have the chance to have a garden, it's always nice to keep a place not managed. I mean, if you have a green golf in your garden, it looks nice for you. Maybe for me, no. It means a desert island of biodiversity. So it's always nice to at least keep a place in your garden for nature. So where you do not mow every week, but where you can even sow some native flowers, attract pollinators and then butterflies and then other species, and enjoy your garden to see living things flying around and living into your garden. And I think this is something not so complicated. Letting some space for nature in your garden is already a nice thing. And I think also you can find guides for which plants you can sow. You can go to Nature and Welt. They have nice I think, guides on our website, and they can also provide you some seeds. But you can contact every nature organization in Luxembourg to have some advices. Please do not trust directly the place where you can buy flowers and plants from all around the world. It's maybe not always the best advice you can get, but please, it's really easy and possible to have a place for nature everywhere.
So wildflowers, to have that buffer, the wild zone.
So if you come to the City Nature Challenge, some of the events will have seed packages from Sicona, and it's a 1 gram of seeds that you can put in a pot. I live in an apartment in the city, so you can spread these seeds in a pot, and they do flower. And we've had a visit from the goldfinch. We've had 2 goldfinches, we've had a wren, we've had sparrows, we've had the great tit, we've had blue tit, and we also bought a nesting box for the black redstart from Naturenumwelt. And they nested in the nest box last year, so they're not back yet. I haven't seen them yet, at least for myself. So we're hoping they're going to use it again.
Well, congratulations. You are really a gold star citizen scientist and biodiversity citizen here. I think you wanted to add.
I wanted to add, John mentioned the wild flower seeds that are being produced. So there is also a lot of initiatives that in the past years they try to educate and inform people about these maybe don't buy, go to Hornbach and don't buy the foreign plants that are imported, because also there's some issues there with invasive species plants, but also insects that they might bring from somewhere else that might pose problems. So he mentioned that's an initiative also by the museum and Sicona. They actually produce now locally within the country, they produce seeds of flowers that actually are from here.
Well,
so
I
it's,
know.
it's not just
This is amazing because
not just flowers that look nicely, but they're actually from the country, from the region. So those will help. And I also have some in my garden, and I see, I just leave them to grow, and then there are crickets on there. There's butterflies coming around. There's all kinds of stuff. So it's something very aesthetically pleasing at some point also to just sit there and have a look.
I can certainly see the movement, because in the commune that I live in, we were offered a number of free plants, which were not seeds. They had literally planted and spread. They were already flowering plants to just put into our gardens or balconies or wherever, pots, and they were being given out for free. So there's a huge proper movement going on in Luxembourg. Just to close, I wanted to bring it back to the European scales. So Gerard, I'm going to come back to you, because we've spoken a lot about a number of different topics all under the same umbrella, but of course a major umbrella, and it's been spoken about by Patrick just now, the need also to have the political will. And when it comes to any European initiative, these things take time, and the Horizon projects, they have frameworks of 6-7 years. So what would you like to see change in the next set of whatever regulations or science projects are allowed under the European Commission's next directives?
The new work program of the Horizon framework, the Horizon Europe framework program, is already underway, and people are already working out new projects as we speak. And there is a big push for harmonizing approaches towards biodiversity. And I think that is a good thing in terms of the research, trying to bring the results from the different initiatives and from the different projects that have been funded over the past decade or so, really now start bringing them together to initiate this next phase of implementation, really. So to have this first prototyping, this first learning and reflection, and now bring that back together into a next phase of action on the ground. I also know that there's going to be a lot of focus on these living labs. And I think that is the sort of the other side of the coin, where a lot of locally adapted approaches will come out of. And I think that is something that we, again, need to be very cognizant about, and that research has to be very cognizant about that there is no silver bullet, and especially in terms of biodiversity, locally adapted solutions are going to be highly important, and are probably going to be the best solution. And I think the European Commission, with its funding programs, pushes in both directions. There's always a bit of a friction, possibly, in then aligning those, so as standardization and the harmonization across Europe, but then also making it applicable at the local scale. But that I find has always been also the mandate of the European Union to bring something together, to take decisions together for the benefit of the continent, but then also to be able to listen to the local regions and to understand how they're working and to improve at the regional level. And I think that is something that needs to be pushed further in the future.
Thank you, Gerrit. And just to close, we have to close with a call to action for us mere citizens. So, Youri, I know that List is going to organise and launch its City Poll event 2025 soon. And so more people can become a little bit like you, John, and we can learn how to help and add to the collection of real data on the ground we walk on.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I would wanted to say that because for the volunteers that want to join us, John explained what he did every 2 weeks, which is I have to say a bit a commitment. We have launched this year a new way of contributing to scientific data with citizens, which will be a 15-minute count, again with using an application. And we will start this new program, which is quite easier for people that want to join us. So don't be afraid, contact us. We have an email address that we can forecast, lupoms@list.lu. Then when you send us an email, we can provide you all the information, and we will have, like you said, an event in April in the city of Luxembourg to actually start the season of collecting data. So all the volunteers and also scientists from LIST will be there. You can send us an email and you can join for free, of course. And we will have another event in May, which is the Lupoms Day. Lupoms is the name for all our different monitoring, pollinators monitoring programs, so butterflies, bumblebees, and wild pollinators, where we every year, we provide the results, show the contribution you made, and invite the people to share together a nice moment. That's the event we have every year.
Well, thank you all so much for joining me today, for telling our audience all about how to become citizen scientists and the great need for this as well to make our homes more harmonious for the birds, the bees, all of the pollinators that are necessary, because in fact our entire lives depend on them. Thank you all so much, and please write in and tell us your feedback if you're a citizen scientist, if you want to become one. I'm sure if I don't add one of the many links, I will find the correct link for you. Thank you so much for listening and watching.
RTL Original Podcast.